Party with your host, Dustin Rybka.
Hello and welcome to Sex Party. I'm your host, Dustin Rybka. This is episode 37. Wow, we're getting up there. 37 is nearly 40. 40 is almost 50. And 50 is just 10 away from 500. My guest this week, Evin Rose. Evin is a dating and self-worth coach. She's incredibly talented, incredibly smart, incredibly good at what she does. She's also very self-aware. She also can recognize her patterns. And these are things that we talk about. What would you do if you were more self-aware? Do you want to be more self-aware? Are you even familiar with what that means? If you could recognize your patterns, harmful and otherwise, before you acted them out, would you be better for it? Would you still sabotage dates and friendships and all of the things? Are you sabotaging? These are some of the things that we're going to tackle in this episode. Evin also shares a bit of a dating horror story at the end of the episode. It's fun. I mean, it's a horror story, but it's fun. I sort of sputter part of a dating horror story out, and it sounds worse. You know how it is around here with me. So, without further ado, let's jump into it. This is my conversation with Evin Rose.
This week's conversation.
Evin Rose, welcome to Sex Party. How are you doing?
I'm good. Just enjoying this hot California, almost October day.
Yeah. So how warm is it in California right now?
It says high 70s, but I just took a walk and I came back really sweaty and sticky. So I don't know. It's not fall. I'll tell you that. Looking at Instagram, it feels like everyone is enjoying fall vibes. And I'm like, ready to be done sweating.
Yeah, I think, people are like wishing for fall in July. I really don't agree with those people. I'm sure some of them are listening, but listen, y'all, you do this every year, then it gets cold. It's like 55 here in Chicago. And now everyone's like complaining, oh, no, wait, not that quick, So it's like one of those things. So, we will try to pretend like we're sorry for you being warm in California, but
There you go.
Yeah. So for the people who are watching, listening in the audience who don't know who you are, could you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do maybe?
Yeah, sure. So I am a dating coach. I specialize in supporting single women around all things self-worth, self-love, getting super clear on what they want, and then showing up in their dating lives from an empowered place, and actually having fun with dating. I think there's like so much fun and adventure and play that's often missing from dating once we start looking for quote unquote something serious, right? Once we're like looking for a forever partner. So I offer coaching, group programs, retreats, courses, all kinds of opportunities to get supported on your love life journey.
Okay. Yeah. So right away, you said dating is fun, playful, all of the things, right? That's the vibe I'm getting from what you're saying. So and this is one of the reasons why I had you on the show, because I think you're more than qualified to help us out with this. I think myself included, right? And I've kind of been polling my social media audience on Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, all of the things. Some pretty rude responses to be real, but like we'll skip over those for now, or maybe we'll circle back. But I feel like I will totally give them to you. I think the last one I got was like fuck dating. It was like fuck period dating, and I totally get it. I totally understand.
Yeah.
Because I feel the same way. But I'm wondering. It seems to be that would be, I would say, 70 to 80% of my audience is like fed up, and they're not having fun with dating, and they're afraid, or they feel unmet. Maybe they feel like just kind of grossed out by dating. So Like how can we get him to where you're at? We're like, it's so much fun. You guys should try it. So like, how do we do that? How do we?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I so get it. Like it is. And when I was in the dating world, I had my fair share of experiences and years where I felt so ready to find my partner, and I felt frustrated and disappointed and unmet, as you said. And certainly that's where the majority of my, the women in my community who come in to work with me, that's where they come in, right? And all of that frustration and like, ughness around dating. So I really get it. Yeah, the fun component of it, it's a few things. One, like you were saying, we always want to look at what we are bringing, right? Like how we're showing up. And oftentimes when dating is feeling really stressful or anxiety producing, it's because we are looking for people to validate us. We are kind of like outsourcing our self-worth, right? So if you go on a date and that person says, you know what, this doesn't feel like a fit, and that feels really devastating, we want to look at like, why is that? What are we making it mean about us, right? Or if we get ghosted, which like sucks, let's not pretend like it's not a pleasant experience. But it also doesn't have to be such a hit to our like self-esteem, or to like feed into our stories that like there's no one good left out there or everyone does this. So we want to be really cognizant of our self-worth, our confidence, and our mindsets, because just as true, like it's absolutely true that there are people out there in the dating world who are shitty, who are, not representing themselves accurately online, who aren't treating people well. That's true. And what's also true is that there are people out there looking for something really authentic, looking for the same type of connection that anyone listening to this is looking for. Right. So it's like, we have to really be so mindful of what we're putting our attention on, what we're showing up for, and also what we're tolerating. Like, not making ourselves available to be in situations, hopefully, where we're going to be unmet, like over and over again.
There's a lot there, all of which is amazing. But the thing that snagged me right on the end there was what people tolerate. Can you talk more about that? Because I just feel like that's such a big one. And I think especially, well, for men and women, but I would say especially for women, because I just feel like y'all put up with so much as it is. Right. And, I'm a guy, I know how we can be. And, not everyone is an asshole, but I'm just saying like, I think women, just like from a society standpoint, it's like already kind of fucked up. And then, for instance, like Bumble is supposed to be this place that's like women focused. And then now I'm like reading these things where it's like, it's just the same as every other thing. Like they're just trying to make money and trying to like cycle you through people. And it seems like less. So I'm wondering if you could say more about how does someone set the bar, man or woman, right? I'm not hating on the guys, but like, how does someone set the bar and say like, this is it. This is my boundary. I'm not crossing it. I'm not accepting that.
Yeah, totally. Well, a good place to start might just be to reflect on the kind of experiences you've had and to ask yourself, like, what didn't feel okay, right? Like what feels either uncomfortable or like what are the kind of experiences where you end up feeling resentful or taken advantage of or pissed off, and looking at our own, not to blame ourselves, right? Because it's never our fault when someone shows up and like puts their shit right into the mix. But we can often look at our side of the equation and be like, was I sticking around for that for longer than I, like oftentimes we see those red flags, right? Or we have an experience. I'm thinking of a client recently who had this just like really uncomfortable date, and the guy got really drunk and was just like giving her way too much information and never letting her get a word. And it's not like he was doing anything like, unsafe for her, but it was really, and it went on for hours, right? And then, um, and then they had like driven together to this. It was a first date, but for some reason they decided to drive together to a different part of LA. LA's huge. And, she was like, and then we had this whole long, awkward car ride back. And then, right. And so I asked her, like, what would have happened if halfway through that date you said, hey, this is not working for me. It was lovely to meet you. I'm going to call it a night. Or what would have happened if, when the date wrapped up, you said, you know what, I'm actually going to grab an Uber, or I'm going to need you to grab an Uber, or right. And she was like, whoa, I could do that. And I think so much of our conditioning as women, to your point, and I'm sure there are other humans who relate to this, but our societal conditioning as women is to not make anyone else uncomfortable, right? It's like, don't rock the boat, pretend you're chill, pretend things are cool, even though inside you're like, this feels terrible. Like, wait to go vent to your girlfriends, but like, don't have anyone else feel bad. And that is a place where we could create a breakthrough, right? Is like, your comfort matters. Your standards matter. So yeah, just getting clear for yourself on like, what am I looking for? What do I want to be available for and not? Right? So if someone says, I'm just looking for something casual, and you're not, maybe listen to that. We put ourselves, oftentimes we'll like keep something going because we're like, maybe they'll change for us, or maybe this is the best I can get. All the reasons I've done it, that we get hooked. Yeah. And then we end up feeling like really disheartened at the end of it, when we could have taken a little bit better care of ourselves and set that boundary sooner.
Yeah, I love that, and I'm really glad that that you're here and you're giving these like fucking thoughtful answers, right? Because everyone has a different take on dating, and I've been like, before I asked you to come on the show and all that, like even until a couple minutes for this interview, I was like researching your stuff, and it seems to be like you have a really it's thoughtful, but it's also like really pragmatic in the sense that this will work if you believe in it and if you apply it. And I feel like some people, for those reasons, like maybe they think they need to be ladylike or whatever that bullshit is, right? And I do feel like that's coming from some other place. I'm actually really surprised that women still feel like they have to ride back with the guy or like do something sexual or whatever because they bought them dinner or like whatever. Like that shit is still happening, and I feel like that's like bad for all of us, men, women, everyone.
Yeah, I mean, that conditioning runs deep, because a lot of these women, the women I work with, from the outside, you'd be like, these are totally confident, empowered women. They have like great careers. They've got everything going for them. And yeah, that conditioning, that like internalized, patriarchal way of thinking, runs really deep. And sometimes it's from fear, right? Sometimes it's like, a lot of us have had experiences where we got to a point with a guy and said, okay, this is as far as I want to go. And then we got their rage, or we got their being shamed of like, you led me on, or, well, then you shouldn't have invited me in, or, a lot of women have had situations like that where they felt really unsafe. And we also, a lot of us have this like looking for external validation, right? So I know for years when I was dating kind of less consciously in my 20s, and I would have experiences where I thought I was choosing. It's not like I was pressured or forced, right? I thought like, oh, I'm being empowered by choosing to like have this casual hookup. But then I'd feel so empty and gross after. And I eventually had to look at like, oh, that wasn't like a true desire. That was actually me wanting to please someone or get their attention or get their validation or feel desirable. And that's a different thing.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing. And you bring up a really great point. I didn't have to segue anything because here we are. So thanks for that. But how can someone tell, right? Because it does get confusing, especially when emotions are in the fucking driver's seat. We've all been there on all sorts of different topics, and whether you're avoidant or whatever you are, you still have emotion, and a lot of times emotions will trick you and, like, you know, show you things that aren't necessarily real, maybe a little bit of an illusion, all of the things.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, like, what I'm asking is, you as a professional who's killing it, doing your thing, how can you tell, right? If you're on a date, maybe it's the first time in a long time or whatever your situation is, but how can you tell that something is real versus potentially doing something because you're feeling some way emotionally or to please someone else? Like, what are some things people can do?
Yeah, it's a really good question. The first thing I would say is just like giving yourself permission to like take a little space and check in with yourself. So that could look like, uh, let's say you're on a date and you're like, it feels like flirty and fun and you're having some drinks and there's like a vibe, and they're like, hey, come back, do you want to come back to my place or whatever? You could just like get up and go to the restroom and stand there for a minute and literally just like take some breaths and check in with yourself and, do a little like self exploration of like, does this, for the first question might just be like, is this what I want to do? And let's say you get a no, great. That would be the thing to follow, right? And on that point, let me just give the little tip that that like if this is someone who you could really have a great connection with, you're not going to ruin it by saying, hey, I'm not ready, or I'd love to go on another date before we, like spend any time one-on-one or whatever. Right? Like if something is going to implode because you didn't take some step forward sexually or otherwise, that's probably not the thing that you want to lean into anyway, right?
Totally.
Or let's say you get a yes. Let's say you're like, my body is telling me yes, like I'm turned on, or I'm, there's like vibes here. Then you might just want to ask yourself, and this would be a good, maybe some reflecting to do, not when you're actually on a date, maybe do this in your own time, but really look at like, okay, what has my pattern been in the past and how has that served me? So in my opinion, there's nothing wrong. Like I'm really big on like, I don't give rules. I don't give like, you need to wait X number of dates, or you should have this title, or, you should or shouldn't have sex on a first date. Like, I don't think dating, love, relationships are one size fits all. I think it's kind of dangerous that we give formulas and rules like that. It also has us not trust ourselves. So there's nothing right or wrong with, let's say, sleeping with someone on a first date, but you might do some self-reflection and notice, every time I've slept with someone on a first date, I then put blinders on, and don't actually look at, are we compatible, or ask them deeper questions, or care about how they're treating me. It like has me get right the oxytocin, all those like hormones that get released, has me feel really bonded to that person. So, maybe for me, slowing down, creating more of an emotional connection with someone first might serve me. That would be a valid choice to make. Right? So it's really personal.
It is, yeah. And that's the thing about dating, is it doesn't get any more, and you know this because you're a pro, but like, doesn't get any more personal than dating, because you're looking for a partner. You're not looking for, I mean, I guess I'm like speaking for everyone, but speaking for myself, you're looking for a partner, right? And it's supposed to be a collaboration. It isn't supposed to be, some crazy thing where you like give your power over and you do all these things to make someone else like happy. And there's, varying opinions on that or whatever, but I just think that's for some reason, and somehow we are really stuck in this thing. And most of the relationships that I've been privy to in my life, and some that I've been in have always been this like power struggle thing. And there's a lot of illusion going on, I think. And I mentioned it on the show before, but like, Chris Rock has a joke about, for the first 3 months, you're not meeting that person, you're meeting that person's chosen representative, and like at the 3-month mark, I feel like it's a lot sooner now, but probably because of social media, that joke's really old. But like that person takes their mask off and it's like, oh fuck, like shit, this is not good. And I feel like that starts in the dating process. We just either choose to not see it. We need something, we need to feel good about ourselves or something. There's something going on, probably a multitude of things. And it makes these like relationships. So when you're coaching and guiding people through this process, is that something that comes up where there is this old sort of like structure of this person wears the pants in the relationship and all of that fucking dumb shit? Is that like, do you sort of like rally against that, or like, what are your views on that? How do you instruct people to?
Yeah. So I don't see much of that with my clients, in that my work, like before I'm even supporting people out in the dating world or exploring new relationships, it's getting really clear on what a healthy dynamic looks like for you, right? And what you want. So I have clients and like women specifically, right? Who I would say the majority, or probably all of whom, are like, I do not want to be in any kind of like power struggle, right? I'm looking for someone, we get really clear on what does that mean. I'm looking for someone who is also looking for a teammate, to create real partnership, right? And we kind of explore what that means. But we also talk about masculine and feminine energy, meaning, and that doesn't need to be along gender lines. Like anyone can lead more with their masculine or more with their feminine. We all have, this is my belief, like we all embody both. And so for some, I have client, for example, who is like really high powered in her career, in her life, in her friendships, in her health and fitness. She's like, makes all of the decisions, leads with her masculine, and that works for her. She loves it. In a relationship, while she absolutely wants to be and will be an equal partner, she's like, I actually want to lead more in my feminine, which is like being more receptive and more in her body and out of her head, and letting she's like, I want my partner to be like, here's where we're going to dinner. Right. And that's her choice. That's not actually giving someone else the power. It like feels empowered for her to get to receive in that way, to not have it all on her shoulders, to pursue someone and make all the plans. And right. So it's again, it's like a personal journey of really discovering, well, what do you want? Because I promise there are people out there who are wanting to create something similar.
Yeah, I love that because I think, and the reason that I framed it that way is because on the show, I keep coming up against those, I guess, like old, like archetype, relationship structures that are like so dated and like gross. And I feel like people just sort of, and I've said this a trillion times too, I should probably figure out a way to reword it so I'm not repeating myself constantly, but like back in the day, you would like meet your friend's boyfriend's cousin's friend, and then if it was just like good enough, then you would like go on and get married, and then a couple of months, years, maybe even weeks, like the dude's like upside down, like in the neighbor's bushes, like he's screaming or whatever horror story is happening. And you're like, whoa, why is my life like this? Like, cause that person is a fucking stranger and you just gave in. And I feel like with all of the choices, again, I'm not speaking for everyone, but with all of the dating apps and services and all of those things, we're still leading with that, like, oh, this person is good enough, or it doesn't feel magical enough, and all of those like sort of things that we've been sold. And I just think that's really it's a really dangerous thing, I think.
Totally. Well, and we put a lot of weight in factors that don't actually matter when it comes to fulfillment in a relationship, right? So a lot of us may have a type. We have an idea of what our partner will look like or what kind of job they'll have, or, just these more surface level characteristics. And then when we find that, we're like, oh, we put that person on a pedestal, right? And those things just, they don't years in, right? They're not what's up. So knowing what your core values are, like what those deeper qualities are that would create alignment with someone, right? That would actually have you be fulfilled. For, when we create an aligned partner wish list with my clients, the first thing I have everyone put on there, I mean, it's like all up to them, except I'm like, emotional availability needs to be on there. And 99 out of 100 women are like, never thought to put that on my list. Right? I had like personality traits maybe, but never thought, right, that someone who can share what they're feeling, someone who I feel safe sharing with or setting boundaries with or asking for what I need, right? Or, someone who like shares a vision of what kind of relationship you want, or do you want a family or not? Like, do you, right? Those are the deeper things that then, like, yeah, of course, attraction matters. I'm not saying we totally take that out of the equation. Of course, you need to feel something. This is not about like settling for what's good on paper. But yeah, if you're looking for real partnership, lasting partnership, we got to get beyond our type or just like the things that turn us on and, dig a little deeper.
Yeah, very interesting. Because, and again, another recycled Dustin statement, but we put more thought into like a jacket purchase than a partner. I think sometimes, like this doesn't really go with that one pair of shoes. So if I'm not going to get it. And it's like, wait, but yeah, you're dating this person who's like a total lunatic and it's okay. What the fuck? So I just think there's something going on with like maybe the rejection piece. Also, like maybe, and I would love to get your thoughts on this, but the whole there's other fish in the sea thing that people recycle at whatever. I mean, I do believe that there is choice out there for people, and now it's supposed to be easier with all of these options, but I just don't know that we're getting the benefit. Like, I don't know that we're taking advantage of the options, the dating apps, the services. So maybe, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say it's less about the platforms, right? The apps or the whatever, and more about how we are showing up to them and what we're choosing and like what we're doing once we get offline with someone. Because I think it's easy to blame. It's easy to like either blame the apps or to be like, the apps are going to solve all of our problems. And neither are true. It's just a platform, right? It's just a digital space where you could, potentially connect with someone. Something else I want to throw in the mix here that I've noticed a lot is one of the reasons that we either go for people or stay with people who we probably know deep down are not a great fit for us, or not a truly aligned partner. Or the flip side of that, to use your jacket analogy, like there are also probably people who are like, no, that's exactly what I do in dating. I find flaws with every single person, right? You could put someone in front of me who has all my shared core values and who's emotionally available and who wants what I want. And I'm going to find something that turns me off, or something that, like, I think, I don't want to, I'm afraid to settle. And so I am going to go back to the apps where there's a million options, right? And try to find this like perfection, right? This like Disney image. And what I've found is those patterns are really two sides of the same coin that just have us avoid real intimacy. So, I would ask yourselves, if anyone's listening and you're like, I really want, or I say that I really want a partner. I say that I'm really ready to create a forever relationship, right? Um, the more obvious fears might be something like, I'm afraid I'll never find that, or I'm afraid, I'll work out. But there's often a deeper fear that's like, I'm afraid that I will find that person. And what would that mean? I had to work through that for myself before I met my partner. I looked at that for myself and I was like, oh shit, it's actually really scary. You have to get so vulnerable. I'm like, I don't know if I actually want to be fully seen by someone. Had lived alone for a while. I was like, whoa, there's actually fears about bringing someone fully into my life, right? And being my full self with them 24/7 and having them be the last person potentially that I'm with, right? And so I would look at that like, what are your fears around intimacy, around actually getting what you say you want, that might have you subconsciously sabotage, right? Either like sabotage things with someone who could be great for you, or fill your time and energy with people who can't, so that you never actually have to go all in.
This is very interesting, because I love this idea, this concept, and I think that you're totally right. I think somebody famous has a quote that's like, we're not afraid of our failures, we're afraid of our successes. Like, we know how powerful we can be, we can get all the things that we want, but then what does that mean, sort of a thing. So
Mhm.
I think you're dead on, and no wonder you have such a following on Instagram, because this is exactly what I hoped we would get to. We just kind of uncovered it. Is the sabotage of it, because we are scared of success and what that looks like. And then also, like, okay, then what? It's like almost like
Yeah.
a pressure, like you put out one great album, now you got to follow it up. And it's like that fucking nagging, gnawing feeling can play into it. So you said that you experienced that. Was that the first time that you became aware of, oh shit, like I'm kind of scared of this working?
I think so. I think so. I'd been in relationships before that were like close to being it. Like, if you look at my relationship trajectory, it's like upward trajectory on a chart, right? It's like each one is like a step closer to what I really wanted. And so I certainly had, you know, relationships in my adult life where I was really in love, where I felt like there was a lot of potential, where I could see myself ending up with that person. But there were always some things in the relationship that were going to have it not work. Like, there were always some, like my last long-term relationship before my current partner, my fiance, um, was it was like so great in so many ways. And he was just starting out his practice, like opening up his business. And he was doing that an hour or so away, and he was so all consumed with that and with work. And it was kind of like revealing some other deeper stuff going on there. And so there was this like factor in the way, right, that like didn't have us go all in, or that. And so I didn't realize it at the time, but there was something safe for me in that I could really lean in and let myself fall and say, maybe this could work, but it was like a little bit tortured. And there's something hot about that too. A lot of us have that pattern where we're like, oh, it's like passionate because it's a little bit hot and cold, or I don't know what's going to happen next.
Mhm.
And so when that relationship ended, I just got really clear that like that was a pattern I was not willing to repeat. And I needed to look at what had me create that, right? That's all we can do, is take responsibility for our side. I'm not here to like pathologize him, right? He gets to work on his own stuff if he chooses. But yeah, it was like I really want to create like lifetime partnership and be with someone where there's constant evolution and growth. And so yeah, I just was doing a lot of like journaling in that season of dating. And as I let myself imagine more and more the vision with this person, I started to notice those fears underneath it. And so I had to really work through that and kind of give myself some reframes, right, in my own mindset and some reassurance and yeah, to be able to like fully open up to receive someone who is, who was like all in from the beginning.
Yeah, I think, you know, just in the last couple of minutes, there's a lot. One, realizing like, okay, potentially maybe I am afraid of success, right? There's that factor. And then there's the factor that you talked about just before that, where it's not the dating app's fault, right? You're still a human in charge of this technology, using
Mhm.
this technology. Which is a really interesting piece too, because people constantly, well, if it wasn't for social media, we wouldn't have no, this is how humans act. It's just a mirror.
Yeah.
So you're saying if we didn't have this, that we wouldn't act like that's not true. So, and I'm constantly having that debate on social, like all the time. And I think the two are sort of linked because we do find these excuses. It's social media's fault. It's dating apps. Social media has ruined dating. Adam Levine, blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's just people acting how they
Mhm.
want to act, and so it's just privilege and having all of the tools to misbehave and do your thing and whatever. And
Yeah.
I think there are these silent things where ultimately you just sort of wrapped it all up in a bow where you said we have to own our shit. It's about owning our shit. It's not the app's fault. It's maybe I don't want this to work because I'm fucking frightened, right? And that's okay. It all sort of comes to to a head with that. And so how much of your process, your coaching, your advice, your social media presence is taking ownership of your shit?
Oh, all of it. All of it.
Boom.
I think that literally sums it up. It's like I am yeah, I'm like so not here to give people strategies of like here's the 5 things to say to like get someone to commit, right? I'm not here to be like here's what's wrong with right dating or the apps or men or whatever. Um, I really believe, you were just talking about it all being a mirror for us. I think everything is a mirror for us. So if you are experiencing, for example, that pattern you referenced earlier of feeling like you get months in with someone and that they're wearing a mask, right? They're sending their representative out, and then you suddenly find out it's like, guess what? Most people are doing that. So where can you look at it for yourself? Where are you being inauthentic in how you're showing up, right? Where are you trying to be some polished version of yourself or the most desirable version of yourself or the coolest version or whatever? And that the more we can take responsibility, right? As I started showing up on dates unapologetically authentic, you know, my full self, quirky, vulnerable, silly, flirty, whatever it was, right? And just like being really truthful when someone asked what I was looking for, or when someone asked about my past, or letting them know if something felt off and asking them to, talk it out. The people I started attracting, the conversations I started having, the relationships I started exploring became more and more authentic. That's not a coincidence. It's not magic, right? It's like my tolerance for bullshit went down as I stepped more into like feeling really proud of how I was showing up. So yeah, it's like it really takes something to look at our to look at our shit, to like look at our side of the street. It's a lot easier to blame, to, make it other people's fault or the app's fault or whatever. And it's not actually about fault, but it is like, dating is a really incredible growth opportunity if you're willing to see it as that. I think it's just like such a cool, if we can take some of the pressure also off of the outcome of any given date, and really focus on like, where can I grow here? What am I learning about myself? What can I practice? What breakthrough do I want to have next? Oh, I'm working on not people pleasing. Okay, what does that look like for me? Or, oh, I'm like raising my standards. Or maybe the practice is like keeping an open mind and giving people more of a chance who don't fit your like more superficial criteria or whatever. So in that way, it's like we could really be growing and transforming through dating. And the like more and more we are stepping into our own authenticity, owning what we want and need, practicing conscious communication, all of that. The more magnetic we're going to be for the people who align with you there, for the people who can fully meet you.
Yeah, see, I'm like personally like obsessed with self-awareness. It just became like a thing for me like a couple of years back, because when what you said about not putting up with bullshit, it like truly, and it sounds so fucking corny, but I'm gonna say it anyway. The first like, first person's bullshit you need to get rid of is like your own. Like you need to stop putting up with your own bullshit. And it's really truly, it's not easy. And I wouldn't even know how to tell someone to practice being self-aware and to, other than like take responsibility for your own shit always. Right. But that's like, that's like amateur hour, whatever. So from your perspective, from where you're sitting, is there anything like, what's like a baby step, right, to start out trying to become more self-aware, not sabotage, whatever, but how do they like take a deep breath and fucking get started with it?
Yeah, I have two ideas other than, of course, I'm going to say like hiring a coach or working with someone who can be a mirror for you, because it's really helpful to have someone who can reflect honestly to us and lovingly,
Sure.
but honestly. But my two tips for getting started with that, one would be, if you're feeling brave, you could ask trusted friends in your life, trusted friends, keyword, don't ask everyone, if they'd be willing to share with you in a kind way if they notice anything that they think might be getting in your way of in dating or finding the kind of partner you want. Because I certainly have friends whose patterns I notice, but even though I'm a coach, I'm not their coach, right? So I don't go around being like, hey, did you ever see that you're doing this thing, right? But if someone asked, I might be able to say, oh, well, I noticed that as soon as you have to have an uncomfortable conversation with someone, you decide they're not the one and move on. I wonder what would happen if you stayed and had those conversations, right? The second thing is just kind of like a prompt to play with in any situation. And we kind of touched on this, but it's given that it takes two people to create any experience, what was my role in this? And again, that's like not from self-blame. So it's not like, oh, I suck, so I attracted someone who sucks. It's not that. But what was my role in this? If for example, like if there's someone that you find yourself in a pattern where you're like, you hook up casually with someone for a month, waiting for them to bring up if, they want to be exclusive or they want a title or something. And then you tend to find out that they don't, it'd be easy to be like, yeah, all men or all people are just looking for something casual, or no one says what they want or whatever. If you looked at what's my role in that, it might be, I don't speak up sooner for what I'm looking for. Or I'm willing to, engage in something casual when that's not really what I want, right? I could practice more bravery in saying, here's my boundary, or having let's get on the same page conversation earlier on, right? So what's my role?
Yeah. And that's going to be hard for some people, because sometimes people are like, I didn't do anything wrong. And like, even if they know deep down they did, they don't want to admit it, blah, blah, blah. Because a lot of what you're saying is recognizing your own patterns, right? And I'm wondering, just to give like a great example, like, and we touched on it a little bit, but was there a specific moment that you can remember in your personal life where you're like, shit, that's a pattern I don't want. Oh my God, that's a pattern or whatever. Like, and it forced you to kind of maybe uncomfortably like check that.
Yeah, I'm sure there are plenty of examples. Let me think of,
because the sabotage thing is huge, right? But I think you can't tell that you're sabotaging. And every time I say sabotage, the Beastie Boys song keeps playing in my head. But I don't think you can recognize how severe the sabotage is until you see that pattern, which is genius that you keep saying that, because they are sort of in conjunction, you know?
Yeah, totally. Well, a couple things are coming to mind. One is kind of similar to the example I just gave. There was a guy that I was in like an off and on thing with for a year or so years ago. And I was so frustrated with him the entire time because this was like how I would have told the story at the time. We would like get together. We'd end up spending a whole weekend together. It would be like so deeply connected. The sex was incredible. It was just like so, we were clearly both so into it. And then we would go our separate ways and we would talk for a little bit. And then he would essentially stop responding or stop reaching out and go MIA for a while. And then inevitably he would call and we would get back together and it would be magical again, right? And I would just complain to like anyone who would listen about how like hot and cold he was and how, he was like stringing me along. Like I just put it all on him. And I like finally woke up to the fact that I was like, I am creating this pattern just as much as he is, right? I'm allowing this. I'm literally showing him through my actions that I'm available for this. Like I'm teaching him that this is cool, right? And I also was really pretending. It was not authentic. I was pretending that I didn't want more because I knew he wasn't available for more. And I knew that if I had that conversation, it would probably be the end. Or at least I would have to like really know that. And I couldn't keep pretending that one day he was going to be like, okay, I'm ready. You're it. And so that, when we talk about looking at our side of it, you're right. It's confronting to take responsibility. It's confronting to be like, whoa, what is it about me that was available for this or that, co-created this? But it's also really empowering because that was also the first moment that I was like, oh, it can go differently. I just have to operate differently. I don't have to wait for him to be different, right? I can either say really clearly, hey, here's what I want from you. And who knows, maybe, he wasn't available for it, but the right person would be. Or we get to free ourselves up to create something different. Right. I'm going to give one other example just because it's a totally different scenario, but something I've really noticed about myself in recent years, both in romantic relationship, but also in friendships, is that I, for so long was like, I want to be like, I am so supportive for people, right? I think I'm a great listener. I am someone people call, in my life for support. And for so long, I was just like, no one shows up as much for me as I show up for them. And this is my complaining, right? And I don't feel as like seen in my relationships as I feel like I provide that space for other people and yada, yada, yada. And finally I was like, okay, again, this is a pattern, right? Who's the common denominator in all of these relationships? It's me. And so what I came to find was like, I wasn't being fully vulnerable with people. I wasn't calling people when I was upset. I was working through it all on my own and then letting them know afterwards that I, had gone through something. Or I would dim myself down and not take up that space in conversations with friends. Or I wouldn't ask for help. I wouldn't say, hey, I'm having a really tough time. Could you check in with me this week? And so once I took responsibility for that, instead of waiting for people to be different, and I literally share with my friends, hey, I'm practicing being more vulnerable here, right? And I ask people more specifically for what I need. And it's really transformed the dynamics of my relationships without outsourcing that to anyone else.
Yeah, that's incredible. And thanks for all of those examples. And I think the other piece you touched on that I want to hit with a hammer really hard, is how empowering, like you said, it does feel when you do start taking hold of all of your own bullshit and owning it and being like, these are my flaws. I know they're flaws. I'm really bad at these things. I'm really good at these things. Yeah, and that was totally my fault. Sorry. Or whatever your thing is.
Mm-hmm.
There is no feeling that is more empowering than that, because you feel a little, at least from my point of view, like you feel a little like RoboCop, you can take the bullets and it's like, oh well, like, I'm trying to get better and whatever, but this is who I am and whatever. And so those things, I think, yes, they're hard. It is very difficult to establish self-awareness. It is something you're always working on, I think. But once you sort of take that first and you feel that for the first time where you like take ownership, man, that's like some otherworldly power.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And it's the first step, right? Like that self-awareness is the first step in shifting a pattern. That's the other thing is like, I think we get overly caught up in like, this is just how I am. And sure, there are things that are kind of more hardwired in, but I think we're actually more malleable and able to evolve than we give ourselves credit for. So you might be someone who's gone around your whole life being like, I'm just not good at vulnerability, or this is just how I am. I'm terrible at boundaries. But if you really look at that and you're willing to look at like, well, where does that come from? And what are the impacts of that? And why does it matter to me to shift that pattern? And then you get to start kind of more calling yourself out in real time. Like, oh, wow. Yeah, I'm feeling resentful of this person because I didn't set a boundary with them. Right. And then you practice. That's all it is. It's not getting it perfect. Right. But just practicing. And I think we can really surprise ourselves by like actually, what we're able to step into and how much possibility opens up in our lives as we break through those patterns.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct. I think possibility is a great way to leave this part of the interview, because I think that's all that is ahead of you once you don't have to be perfect, right? But like, absorb those hits and be like, shit, maybe I'm doing something that's not great for myself, right? And then if you move forward with that, I just feel like possibility is the only thing that's in front of you at that point, once you're willing to accept it, right? So I'm wondering, at the end of the interview, can you give, just for fun's sake, if you have a story, like a dating horror story, right? Because we like to laugh at shitty things and horrible situations. So if you have one that's like, kind of weird or fun or bizarre, I'm going to keep talking to give you time to think. But
Keep talking.
so if you have one, we can roll with that. Or I'm trying to think if I have I have a lot of really strange ones. I don't really go on many dates. I haven't. I'm just more of like a party goblin, I think, that just sort of bounces around and drinks and whatever. But I have. There was a date where I never got the person's name. I don't know if I want to explain this as like, it's kind of a blind date, not really. But it's a really, really bad date. That's the only one that's coming to my mind. I'm sure you have something better. You seem like someone who like consciously dates even before you were a coach. So
I'll give you one. I'll give you
perfect.
one. Well, it's funny. I'm noticing how hard it is for me to find one in my brain because I'm so used to telling. I often tell like inspiring dating stories, right? I have a million examples, especially with clients, of like what's possible in dating. But I'll go back in my mental Rolodex. So this is the story of my first online date. I was in a relationship from the end of college through 25, and we broke up. And so that was the first time ever going on a dating app, right? They were like relatively new still, and it felt very exciting. And I went out with this guy who we sat down, first date, sat down at a bar. He turns to the bartender, orders me a martini, and like describes in detail what the martini should be. I don't like martinis. It's not what I drink. Right. It doesn't ask me anything. There was no like, would you like me to order for you? Is this what you want? No. Sit down, turns to the bartender. He's like, she'll have yada, yada, describes it in detail. I was just so taken aback that I didn't like, me now. Well, I guess I wouldn't be on a date now, but me, a year and a half ago when I was dating, would have been like, dude, what the fuck? But no, no, thank you. But I just was so like startled and people pleasy at the time. I let that happen. And then he was like, do you like oysters? And I was like, no, I don't eat oysters. Turns to the bartender, orders himself a tray of oysters and just sits there and slurps them down, and then proceeds to like, I think he read that book, The Game. Is that what it was called? That terrible, how to like essentially make women feel awful about themselves and then swoop in and rescue them. I think that's what he was doing. There were so many little digs and, comments about all different aspects of me. And, and I brought him home that night.
Okay.
Maybe that was the wake-up call we were talking about here earlier.
Okay. So his bullshit worked to some degree.
Well, here's the thing. I think, if I'm being honest, I think my mind was made up before we even met up that I was like, I need a palate cleanser. I'd just gotten out of this like 3+ year relationship and had spent months heartbroken, and it was my first date. I thought he was hot. I think I literally was just like, I think I decided pre-date. So I don't know that it worked. And good for 25-year-old me that I did the next day say, I'm not interested in seeing you again. And, thanks for the martini. But I think that was a low point. I think that's when I started really, really working on myself a bit more intentionally.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you were on a date with like a fucking cartoon cat or something. It just sounds like really like he's like at the bar, like you whatever. And but at the same time, like that's incredibly human, right? And that's why I asked that on the end, because it's like, hopefully this episode, these people are fucking inspired. Come on, guys, right? So there's that. But then at the end, like you get to be human and have a little fun on Sex Party. So like that's the whole thing. I think people do that all the time, right? Like if you're not sure what you want, you're going into whatever, you're going to have dates like that, and you're going to hook up with people that aren't great and whatever. And I think that's just the way things are. And I think it's human. And I think, thank you for sharing all of that with the audience. It's fucking amazing. Evin Rose, where can people find you? Where can people work with you? Where can they check out your social media?
Yeah. Instagram, Evin Rose, EVIN. I'm on TikTok now. I'm trying to be hip, trying to learn how to use it. Having some fun there. I think I'm Evin Rose Love Coach. And then evinrosecoaching.com is my website. So you can always see what's going on as far as courses, programs, but I'm also just always happy to connect with people personally. So if there's anything you heard in this episode that you want to learn more about, you feel inspired by, you want to explore what it would be like to have some support in this area of your life, DMing me on Instagram is probably the easiest. So we can chat.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. I love what you're doing. I think people should run over there to your Instagram and check it out. A lot of awesome content. And I have an idea. I'm going to talk to you offline about it, but like we might be seeing you again soon. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was fun.
Of course. Huge thank you to my guest, Evin Rose, for being on the show with me this week. I appreciate her a lot, her insight, her honesty. Her coaching is great. Go check it out on her Instagram. Everything is linked in the show notes. Listen, guys, if you're enjoying guests like Evin, if you're still on board with all my wackiness, there's a couple different ways you can show that. If you're listening on platforms like Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, Google, iHeart, wherever you're listening, you can subscribe. You can leave a rating. You can leave a review. You can tell your friends. I wish you would tell your friends, but you don't have to do any of this stuff. You can if you want to. I appreciate it. If you're watching on YouTube, hello, what's up? Are we okay? If you're watching on YouTube, you can subscribe to the channel. You can like the video. You can leave a comment. Again, none of this stuff is a must, but it is a bonus. And I would appreciate it if you do. This helps the show grow in every which way possible. If you'd like to chat with me, you can send me a DM on Instagram, preferably. I am available on Twitter as well. Limited hours. No idea what that means. But reach out. Let's talk. Also, you know what I'm going to say. I'll see you back here next week.
Thanks for listening. The party continues next week. Click subscribe and let's make this a regular thing. Follow the show on Instagram and Twitter @SexPartyFM. Follow Dustin @Dustin Rybka.